What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now, Back to the Past. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to look back at Alan Wake. I think this is the absolute perfect time to do this, considering we have Alan Wake 2 coming out in just, 2-3 weeks from now. Oh my god, I'm so excited for it. It's my most anticipated game of the entire fall, more than Spider-Man, and also, obviously, October, Halloween month here on the channel. I'm trying to look back at all these horror games, and, well, while Alan Wake isn't necessarily the scariest game, it definitely has some horror elements to it, and boy, we got a lot to talk about. So what I want to do first is kind of talk about my experience with this game, because I do have a little experience with it. So May of 2010 is when this game first came out, and this is actually one I really regret. I don't have this game physically. I have it digitally. I have the remaster. I think they gave me the remaster for review actually back when it released, but I have that, it's all digital, and I want to get it physically. I've looked it up. Alan Wake actually is a little on the not super expensive, but it's on the more expensive side in terms of like third-party stuff. But this is a game I absolutely regret not having like in my hand. I really do want it in my hand. So this is a game that growing up, I didn't own it. I actually have never owned a physical copy of Alan Wake. So what happened is there was this business called Family Video, right? So it's like Blockbuster, Family Video. So it's one of those kinds. And it's pretty close to my house, maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes away, growing up. So my friend had a 360, a very close friend. We'd sleep over. I'd sleep over at his house all the time. And for a good stretch of time, and it probably was around 2010, I think it was roughly close to the time that this game first came out. So I do want to say I played it when it first released 13 years ago. So I would go there and we would rent games. Now, I had a PlayStation, he had an Xbox. I didn't have the opposite. I had like an Xbox growing up, but not a 360, and I don't think he had a PS3. I'm pretty sure he relied on me for the Uncharted's of the world and the Infamouses of the world. So what I would do when I'd sleep over at his house is I'd go to Family Video, I'd look around, and I would rent a game. I'd rent a game to play, and for most games, we'd only play it the one night. I'd go over to his house, play it, and I would, return the game the next day or the day after because I'd have no use for it. I didn't have a 360. Alan Wake is one of, if not the only games that I rented, we played, and then we made a conscious decision that we have to see it through. We have to beat the entire game. So weekly, because this was back 13, I was in high school, or maybe it was even middle school, could have been younger than that. No, I was in early high school. So I think every weekend, I'd sleep over at his house, or maybe every 2 weeks, and I'd go back to Family Video, and I'd rent this game. And it was always there, and that's not a shocker because this game actually never sold well, but I'd rent the game, I'd go to his house, and we would play it. And we loved it. We didn't think about it too hard in terms of like what kind of game this is or like the deeper story, because like nowadays I love this game primarily, actually maybe even only, because of its fantastic story. I think this game is super well written. Remedy, this is what really, in my opinion, put them. I mean, I know they did Max Payne, and Max Payne 3 is actually my favorite of the Max Payne games, and that obviously wasn't even them, but this is the game to me that put them on the map. They did Max Payne 1 in 2001, Max Payne 2 in 2003, and then I don't even know what they were doing in between 2003 and 2010, but 2010 was Alan Wake. Then they did American Nightmare, obviously, in 2012, and that followed. I mean, Quantum Break, and you had Control, and obviously now Alan Wake 2, and now they're really kicking it up to, to full gear and making like 17 games at once. But back then, I had really, I don't even think I had heard of them. I played the first 2 Max Payne games. In fact, my dad actually, one of the very few games he ever played were the Max Payne games. I didn't know who Remedy was. I didn't know that they made Max Payne. All I knew was Alan Wake was a little scary. Like, I remember playing this game, and we would have to take my friend's dog outside. Like, we had to, let the dog out, and we would be afraid, we like opening the door, and there was the light, above the door, and we'd like stand in the light, and we would be thinking, literally, because we had just played Alan Wake, we'd think to Alan Wake in terms of like the dark and the light being like the protective force, right? It was like, I really remember this game. This game, not really like growing up. I guess if I was 15, right? I didn't grow up on this game. I'd say that was more like Crash or Sly for me. But this game was really important. I'll always remember. I haven't actually talked to my friend about this game in a long time, but I would guarantee that he would remember this. I think this was a pretty impactful memory on both of us. But again, I didn't really take it in. We kind of looked at it back then more for the horror, because it was a little bit of a scary game. Enemies would kind of like jump out, and whenever you have have like a protective field around you that you have to shine the flashlight on, it's a little scary. At least it wasn't the most scary. Dead Space, Fear, like there was definitely scarier games back in the day. But this game was good for what it was in terms of horror. In terms of the game itself, I know I haven't really talked about the game too much itself. This game is awesome. It really is. And again, I think it's aged really well, because one of the things that's never been good about this game is the gameplay. Right? I don't think that's controversial. I don't think that's crazy in any way. I think you could sense that back when it first came out. I think you could sense that with the remaster, or even now. That's what makes Alan Wake 2, I think, so special, is we all kind of expect it to be the same writing style and quality as what they've done with Control, with Alan Wake Original, but the gameplay needs to be better. Control already was a lot better in terms of gameplay than Alan Wake. I think Alan Wake 2 will be much, much better, right? But you go back to Alan Wake 1, it really is what everybody says it is in terms of the gameplay. It's too much. There's too many groups of enemies. It's too many wave-based things. And when you really break it down and you just focus on the story, all that gameplay melts away. I would say this without feeling guilty literally at all. If you're looking to get into Alan Wake 2, say, right, the game's coming out and you're like, oh, I'm really excited. Should I try Alan Wake? Here's what you do. You go online, you watch the movie, you watch the cutscenes of Alan Wake, maybe watch a few story explained videos, try to figure out what's going on, and then play Alan Wake 2. That's 1,000% what I would recommend. You might miss stuff, I suppose, if you're just watching all the cutscenes. You might miss some of the smaller details as you're walking around the world and playing it. But I feel like it's it's going to work out for you more, because I think you're just going to get a little frustrated and say, man, the gameplay here is not good. Because it's not. The gameplay I do not think is good in this game. Again, I think it's repetitive. It's like clever in terms of, like I said, shining the flashlight, waiting for like that burst, and then you open fire. A couple different weapons. You have to manage your lights and like your recharge and all that. I mean, there's a little something there, but the main part of Alan Wake is the storytelling, is the characters. And I don't want to get too deep. This isn't like a story explained or Alan Wake explained it in any way. But again, back in the day, I had no idea, I think, what was going on. I don't really think we paid attention to the story. I can tell you now, the idea that this game is basically like a book, even though I don't read, like I read, but I don't read books, right? Because I'm always online, I guess, right? So Twitter and articles and stuff, and I read in games, but I'm not like a book guy. Like, it's been a very long time. There's not too many series I ever read in the first place. Harry Potter, though, is one of them. So when this game, goes throughout and it's like chapter 1, chapter 2, I love games that do. I think that's really clever. And also the fact that he's writing a story, right? Like Alan Wake is literally a writer. He's literally writing a story. But I would say, and I've said this recently, and I don't really know if anybody else has been saying it, so I do want to like trademark this as like my thing. I really believe Sam Lake is a very close replica of Tetsuya Nomura. When I think of Kingdom Hearts, I think of how much I love the characters in the story and the it's so convoluted. It's so messed up, Kingdom Hearts, and it's very hard to follow, and I adore it. I love it. I think I can follow it better than most people, Kingdom Hearts. It does take work. It takes some effort, and you shouldn't really have to do that, but you do. And I think of Tetsuya Nomura when I think of why Kingdom Hearts is as messed up in a good way as it is. I think of that man. When I think of Alan Wake, the first thing I do is technically Alan Wake, Sam Lake, right? Like clearly he did something there as well. He is like Alex Casey when you look at the second game, his face model, and that's something that he's done before. He's the face model of Max Payne. But when I think of Alan Wake, I believe Alan Wake is convoluted. It's not as hard to follow, I believe, as Kingdom Hearts is, although I gotta give it to him for one game. But then there's American Nightmare and Control's in the same universe, and that kind of builds it out. And Quantum Break is a little important, but not really. I guess if you think of the first Alan Wake game, the amount of lore and convolutedness that's inside Alan Wake gives Kingdom Hearts, I'd say, a run for its money. Kingdom Hearts has had a franchise and 20 years and like 15 games to really build up how crazy it is. Alan Wake, just Alan Wake itself, like the one game, has done a lot. And then if you take Control and you take these other games, they have built it into a universe and they have made it pretty convoluted for how little games that there are. So honestly, I do believe as time has gone on, as I've gotten older and as I've, I guess, appreciated more of the storytelling side of games, especially compared to when I was 15, I think, okay, when I think of Alan Wake, I think of Sam Wake, and I also think this is almost the same thing as Kingdom Hearts, just being a little bit more westernized. But I think it's very clever. I think the idea of dark and light, in fact, it's got a lot of parallels to Kingdom Hearts, if we're being honest. Dark and light, the dark place, Alan writing and the writing becoming reality, Thomas Zane, Mr. Scratch. There are so many cool characters in this game. Just Alan Wake. So many cool characters, such a cool premise. But I think this is a very special game. It is convoluted, but it is pretty cool, the idea of light and dark and the mystery powers, basically, of the environments. And again, I guess what that really means is the idea that the writing, right? Thomas Zane writes and it becomes reality. He erases himself from basically the entire picture. Alan Wake comes in. He's writing. He's basically creating his own, reality. He has to kind of write his way out of it. That's the basis of it. That is why I believe that the gameplay lacks so much, especially looking back, because when you boil it down, it's actually almost that simple. Then obviously if you just look at the story, it's complex. It's got a lot of characters, and it's got characters kind of like they die, but their souls go into a different thing, like Thomas Zane, technically. The diver in Alan Wake, the thing that you see here and there, or you see like a bright light, technically that's not Thomas Zane. That's Thomas Zane's almost soul or like entity put into something else. So is it really like, it gets more complicated, but the gameplay kind of stretches it out like further than it really needs to be, right? The game actually doesn't need to be as long as it is. It's only long because it's waves and waves and waves of enemies and just things kind of getting in your way of enjoying, I think, a really well done story. So I'll never forget it. Like I know I spent most of this video talking kind of about my history and not focusing too much on the game, but this game, like, it's always been special to me, especially, I know I glossed over it a little, but like me, like I didn't have the 360 for a long period, and like now I do, but I didn't have it back then. And for the longest time, like how I experienced the majority of like Halo games, Alan Wake, like these things stick out to me, and Alan Wake was one of them. Like I played Halo Reach at this same friend's house and all this stuff, but Alan Wake is one that I'll never forget. The box cover, like the box cover, I think it's so simplistic, but it's so cool. Like I love what it looks like, and I can do it right now. I remember like walking into the store, the gaming section was kind of like the corner of a store. You almost like went into some like tent looking weird thing, and it was like a circle environment, and it was, labeled PlayStation, Xbox, Wii or whatever, and you look through it, and then on Xbox, I just remember seeing the logo, Alan Wake, you see him with a flashlight, and it's like, oh, this is cool, let's try it. And I'll never forget that most of these games we never would play again. It was just, even if it was longer game, like we played long games, but we would play it one night. We'd play 3, 4, 5 hours. We'd bring it back, or I would bring it back like the next day, and it would be it. We never touched it again. Alan Wake played, and we said, no, there's something here. Like maybe it was the horror part of it. Maybe we were somewhat interested into the story, but I remember us making the decision, no, when I come back next week or the next weekend, I gotta do it again. And I'd rent it with my own money. Like this would be my own money. I think he maybe chipped in. Maybe we went half and half, if I remember that correctly. But and I would just rent them, and we would play it, and we beat Alan Wake. So I had a blast. Like this game will always stand out. I suppose for that fun little like childhood memory. And then I guess it's interesting a decade plus later looking back and saying, the reason I like it now is not even necessarily the reason I liked it back then. I think it's a really well-written, it's a really clever, just different. And so many people are talking about Alan Wake 2 in terms of this is a AAA game that's just so different. Nobody makes big, even though Remedy's not even that big, but nobody makes these big AAA games with this kind of quality the same way. Like they're just doing like A24 or something that people have brought up, right? Like they're just doing their own weird stuff. And that really started, I don't even really think it started with Max Payne. I feel like that was more mainstream. Started with Alan Wake, I believe. Remedy's kind of like quest into like just being odd. And then, like I said, they've built an extended universe. Like they've made their own like Marvel Cinematic Universe. Remedy has done that. And all of that, by the way, one thing I normally say, and I actually didn't say it here, Alan Wake, like none of these games sell. Alan Wake, the original, didn't sell. American Nightmare didn't sell. They were almost like Sam Lake looks visibly upset. You can actually watch videos where he announces like there's not going to be an Alan Wake 2. He looks like he's going to cry. And I love that because, I mean, you can tell the passion that this guy has for Alan Wake. That's his kid, right? He loves that. He loves the character. He loves the story. He loves all of that. And it's like, it means so much to him. But you think about it, it's just never done well. That's actually why I'm a little worried about the second game selling, because the remastered game didn't even make its money back. Like these games, for whatever reason, Alan Wake, because it's not, I guess, that big. Like, it's a AAA game. It's a game that was exclusive to Xbox, at least back then. But this is just something that I don't think has ever really performed all that well sales-wise, which is crazy, because I think it deserves a lot more. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you guys are subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.